"Ladies and gentlemen," my father announced, lifting his glass, "meet my daughter, a complete waste of good genetics." He smiled like a shark. "She spends her days crawling through filth, taking care of society's garbage instead of carrying on my legacy. A tragedy, really." 300 guests laughed. They thought it was a joke. They didn't know I had a wireless microphone hidden in my sleeve, and they definitely didn't know I was about to turn his $25 million gala into a federal crime scene. Before I tell you how I destroyed his career 30 seconds later, tell me in the comments, have you ever been humiliated by your own family? I need to know I'm not alone. I stepped out of the shadows. The sharp click of my heels against the marble floor sliced through the laughter like a blade. Silence fell. The dangerous kind. I walked straight up the stairs to the stage. My father narrowed his eyes. He expected tears, a tantrum, a desperate plea for approval. He expected the daughter he'd bullied for 20 years. He didn't get her. I reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He was too stunned to stop me. 300 faces stared back, waiting for the punchline. "My father is right about one thing," I said calmly. "I do work with the state's most vulnerable." I paused. Let the silence choke the room. But he forgot to mention my title. I looked directly at him. "I am the Senior Program Officer for the State Health Fund, and the sole signatory with veto power over the $25 million grant Dr. Marcus has been begging for since January." The room didn't just go quiet, it froze. My father's face drained from flushed arrogance to corpse gray in a single heartbeat. His glass slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the stage. Red wine spread across the marble like blood. I didn't look down. I opened the thin black folder under my arm. "Let's talk about this proposal," I said evenly. "A Center for Dignity Recovery. Sounds noble." I flipped a page. "I conducted a line-item audit this morning." I turned to the donors in the front row. 80% of the budget is allocated to facility upgrades, specifically imported Italian leather furniture for executive offices and marble flooring for a private lobby. I flipped another page. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Not a single cent," I continued, "is allocated for patient beds." Another page. Section 4. Administrative transport. My eyes lifted to my father. "And that's where the federal violations begin." $300,000, I continued, "for 2 luxury SUVs, for a nonprofit that claims to serve the homeless." I turned to my father. He was shaking now. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a fish dragged onto dry land, finally realizing the water was gone. "This isn't a medical facility," I said calmly into the microphone. "It's a retirement plan disguised as charity." I snapped the folder shut. "Dr. Marcus, your application is formally rejected due to gross financial mismanagement and attempted fraud. You will not receive a single dollar of state funding, as long as I'm the one holding the pen." I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the speakers. Then I walked off the stage. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the shock rolling through the room like heat. For 29 years I had been invisible. The disappointment. The joke. But that night, under lights he paid for with money he didn't have, I was the only thing anyone could see. 10 years earlier, in the mahogany library of his estate, my father had stood holding my acceptance letter to the state's top social work program. He didn't smile. He didn't congratulate me. He walked to the fireplace, crumpled the letter in his fist, and tossed it onto the flames. "You want to be a janitor for human refuse?" he said, brushing ash from his hands. "Fine. But don't expect me to pay for you to ruin your life. The moment you walk out that door, you're dead to me." He thought he burned my future that night. He thought cutting me off, refusing to speak my name for a decade, had erased me. But fire doesn't just destroy things, it forges them. While he was building an empire of vanity projects and plastic perfection, I was working double shifts. I put myself through night school. I survived on ramen and stubbornness. I earned my master's in public administration. I rose from caseworker to district manager to a seat on the state board. He never knew. He never asked. To him, I was just a ghost. A failure he occasionally used as a punchline to feel superior. That blindness was his fatal mistake. From the edge of the stage, I looked down at him. He was gripping the podium, knuckles white, staring at me like a stranger who had broken into his house. He didn't recognize the woman standing there. He only saw the girl he had thrown away. The truth is, his grant application had landed on my digital desk 6 months earlier. I saw the inflated numbers. I saw the shell companies listed as contractors. I could have rejected it quietly, sent a professional email, ended it cleanly. But that wouldn't have been justice. Because if I had denied him in silence, he would have blamed bureaucracy, politics, bad luck. Instead, I let him build the stage. And then I let the truth walk into the light. He would have found another donor to charm, another way to prop up his collapsing house of cards. I needed to cut the head off the snake. So, I waited. I approved the preliminary rounds. I let him think he'd already won. I watched him book the grand hotel. I watched him order the lobster and the vintage wine. I waited until he had gathered every important person in the city, every witness he needed to validate his ego. I let him build his own courtroom, hire his own jury, pay for his own execution. You didn't just build a gala, Dad, I thought, looking into his terrified eyes. You built a trap, and you walked right into it. He thought my silence over the last 6 months was submission. He didn't realize it was the silence of a hunter, waiting for the target to get comfortable. He wanted a show. I gave him one. I hope the lobster was worth it, I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear before turning away. The silence in the room wasn't heavy anymore. It was electric. For the first time in my life, the air didn't smell like his expensive cologne. It smelled like clean, cold justice. I pushed through the heavy service doors, leaving the murmurs of the ballroom behind. The air in the staff corridor was cold, smelling of industrial cleaner. I didn't run. I walked with the steady, measured pace of someone who had just finished a job. I just wanted to get to my car, to the silence, to the end of this long, ugly chapter. But monsters don't just die because you cut off their food supply. Sometimes they get hungry. The door slammed open behind me, not a normal entrance, a collision. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. The heavy, frantic breathing gave him away. You stop right there. His voice echoed off the concrete walls, stripped of all its public polish. Raw, ugly, wet with rage. I stopped, turned slowly. Dr. Marcus stood 10 feet away. The impeccable tuxedo was rumpled. His face was a map of red fury and sweat. The veins in his neck bulged. He didn't look like a brilliant surgeon anymore. He looked like a cornered animal. You think you can walk away? He lunged before I could step back, grabbing my wrist. His fingers dug into my skin hard enough to bruise. You think you can come into my house in front of my peers and humiliate me? He spat. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his eyes. I didn't pull away. I stared at him with absolute clinical detachment. Let go, I said. Or what? He hissed, leaning in close. I could smell the vintage wine on his breath. Sour, stale. You'll write another report. You'll toe on me, you ungrateful, treacherous little brat. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me? By destroying my reputation? There it was. The truth. Naked. Ugly. And suddenly, everything made sense. For years, I thought he hated my career because it didn't make money. I thought he despised my choices because they weren't prestigious enough. But looking at the sheer panic in his eyes, I realized I had been wrong. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the grant. It was about hierarchy. In his mind, he was the sun, and I was supposed to be the moon, meant to reflect his light or disappear into darkness. But that night, the moon eclipsed the sun. The waste of genetics had overruled the genius. The babysitter had fired the surgeon. The injury to his ego was so deep it was cracking his sense of reality. He wasn't furious because he'd lost money. He was furious because I had proven I was stronger than him. He couldn't survive a world where his victim became his judge. "Your reputation?" I asked calmly, my voice cutting through his hysteria. "I didn't destroy your reputation, I turned on the lights. If you don't like what people see, that's not my problem." "You ruined everything," he screamed, shaking my arm, spit spraying from his mouth. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I know? I'll bury you. One phone call and you'll never work in this state again. I'll sue you into the ground until you're begging on the streets with the people you pretend to care about." He wasn't listening. He was retreating into the only weapon he had left: threats. He still believed he could intimidate reality into obeying him. I yanked my arm free. The sudden resistance made him stumble. "You're not listening," I said, stepping forward, forcing him back against the wall. "You think this is over? You think I came here just to embarrass you?" He glared at me, chest heaving, eyes darting down the empty hallway. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled. "But I have an insurance policy. You think you're clever? You think you can take my money? I still have something you care about." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. The rage in his eyes sharpened into something cruel. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "You want to play the villain?" he said, smiling slowly. "Let's see how brave you are when your grandmother is sleeping on a park bench tonight." He lowered the phone deliberately, letting the threat hang in the air like smoke. He thought he had finally found the one button that could control me. "You see," he continued softly, almost kindly, "you have your little title, your clipboard, your moral superiority, but I have the one thing that actually matters." He spread his arms wide, gesturing to the opulent hallway, to the echo of the gala, to the illusion of power he still clung to. "I have resources. I have reach. You think rejecting one grant stops me?" "I have a black fund, darling," he said softly, almost amused. "A rainy day reserve that you and your little bureaucrats can't touch." He laughed, a sharp, broken sound, and grabbed a half-empty bottle of Chateau Margaux from an abandoned service cart. He poured it into a water glass and swirled it like a king showing off a crown. "Look at this wine, $2,000 a bottle. Look at the lobster on the buffet. Do you know who paid for all of this?" He smiled proudly. "The foundation. My foundation. I can write off a $100,000 party as donor cultivation. I can fly to Paris on research trips. I live in a world where rules are suggestions and money is the only law." He took a slow sip, eyes locked on mine. "You can't hurt me," he said. "I am the institution." I didn't blink. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. 3 taps. I turned the screen toward him. It wasn't a recording. It was a photo. A crystal-clear image of the gala's catering invoice, the wine list, and consulting fees paid to a shell company registered in his own name. "You're right, Dad," I said calmly. "You are the institution." His smile faltered. "And that's exactly why you're going to prison." The glass froze halfway to his mouth. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "It's called self-dealing," I said, "and under IRS Code 4941, it's strictly illegal for a private foundation officer to use charitable funds for personal benefit." I swiped. "No luxury dinners, no vintage wine, and definitely no donor cultivation parties that are really just ego showcases for the chairman." I swiped again. A screenshot of the federal statute. You just admitted. Bragged, actually. That foundation money paid for tonight. That's not a loophole, Dad. That's tax fraud. It's embezzlement. His face went pale. And when you add the inflated construction contracts I found in your grant proposal, I continued, that turns this into a RICO case. His hand began to shake. The wine sloshed over the rim, staining his white cuff red. I photographed the menu, I said evenly. The bottles, the invoices. Then I met his eyes. And 30 seconds ago, while you were boasting about your black fund, I uploaded everything to a secure server shared with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. You wouldn't, he whispered. I already did. I leaned closer. This isn't a party anymore, Dad. It's a crime scene, and you just gave me the confession. He stared at the phone like it was a loaded gun. The swagger evaporated. The brilliant surgeon disappeared. All that remained was a frightened old man, finally facing consequences. You traitor, he breathed. No, I said quietly. You committed the crime. I just turned on the lights. Panic twisted into rage. Instead of backing down, he yanked out his own phone, thumb hovering over a contact. Delete the photos, he hissed, or I stop paying for your grandmother's nursing home. Tonight, they roll her bed onto the street. He turned the screen toward me. Shady Pines. I didn't flinch. Call them, I said. Speakerphone. He dialed. The line went dead. Disconnected. She's not there, I said calmly. I moved her last Tuesday, the Kensington facility. 1 year paid in full. His face collapsed. The story he had told himself, about me being broke, naive, beneath him, disintegrated in real time. You never saw me, I continued. You were too busy admiring your own reflection. I stepped closer. I earned my degrees. I managed budgets bigger than your hospital. I saved half my salary for 5 years. I paused. You assumed I was weak because I refused to worship you. His knees gave out. He slid down the wall and hit the floor. Please, he whispered. I have money hidden. I can fix this. I didn't answer. I just turned my phone toward him. The screen showed an active call. Call in progress. Special Agent Miller, IRS Criminal Investigation. He's been listening for the last 3 minutes, I said. The phone slipped from his fingers and clattered across the concrete. That was it. The fight was over. I walked down the service hallway as federal agents closed in behind me. There was shouting. Then sirens. Then the small, panicked voice of a man who had finally discovered gravity. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I got into my modest car and dialed my grandmother. It's done, I said. A pause. And him? She asked quietly. He can't hurt us anymore? For the first time in my life, the noise in my head, his voice, was gone. Not happiness. Something better. The relief you feel after cutting out a tumor. I drove away without looking back. People like him think power makes them untouchable, but truth always lands. If someone is treating you like you're invisible, let them. Ghosts walk through walls. Ghosts see everything. And by the time they finally notice you, the checkmate is already set. Sometimes being overlooked is your greatest advantage.